when I grown up in China as a kid, I never drink milk. And it's not that I don't want to drink milk. I cannot drink milk. There's no milk available. And back in the 80s, even 90s, it's hard to find milk in China. And because only in the entire country, only a few dairy farmers stay on farms, and usually those milk was supplied to government officials, and ordinary people are not able to access to milk.
Good afternoon, Walter, and welcome to the Dairy Podcast Show.
Well, thank you, Mark, for having me.
Great. So for those of you listening in, Walter is a great longtime friend and colleague and business colleague. And I'd like Walter to just take a little time to introduce himself and a bit of his background, how he got to where he is and what he does currently. I'll just set the stage a little bit. I got to know Walter, I think almost 10 years ago, perhaps, or more. I had the opportunity to do some teaching in China, along with a good friend and colleague, Daryl Needham at Cornell University. And those early years, Cornell had what was called the Cornell China Dairy Institute. And it was a month-long program, and we taught in the morning at an agricultural university, and then in the afternoon we did wet labs at a dairy. And Washa Dairy, one of the early larger dairies in China, was a client of Walter's. He'll tell you a little bit about his consultancy in China. And that was where I first got to know Walter, Chen, and some of his colleagues. And really that started the opportunity to work more closely with Walter, his colleagues, his technical team in China, and the clients that we work with jointly. Walter lives in Fresno, California, and I'm there often, so we get many opportunities to catch up over dinner and with his family and learn more about not only Walter's history, but what he's doing day to day with his clients. So with that, Walter, can you give us a little background? You have quite a varied background, from a young man in China to graduate work in the USA and owning your own dairy in the Central Valley also. So give us a little background.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Well, I was born and raised in China. And, it's kind of strange that when I grew up, I never really seen the cows until I went to college. And I went to Southern China Agricultural University. My major was animal science. So that's when I first see cows. And at the time was just, some state-owned farms that owned a few hundred cows. So very little, there's no dairy industry per se in China back in the early 80s. So that's where I grown up. When I became really interested in dairy was when I graduated from college. My first job was with a American dairy farm that was just built right around 85, 86. And his American businessman called Mr. K. He decided to invest a dairy farm in Guangzhou, Guangdong province. At the time, China was just open up, and allow foreign investment go into China. And he saw the opportunity because there was no dairy in China, and he saw that children are not, able to drink milk. They cannot find any milk anywhere. And of course, he's based in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong people certainly wanted to drink milk. So his idea was to invest in a dairy to produce milk and then export to Hong Kong at the time. So when I first went to work at the dairy was very modern. I was surprised. It was very, very modern. It was, freestall barns with all the cows imported from the United States and Canada, and a freestall barn with milk importer, TMR, and it's quite modern, almost as good as the one we've seen today in most of the dairy farms in the United States or even in other parts of the world. And so that was really get me interested in dairy because the management are a company called Mastock Company is a Irish company that they send all the professional to manage the farm. So I get to meet with a lot of people from all over the world, actually not just the Irish people, but there's a lot of other international professionals, veterinarians, nutritionists who come to work at the farm at a different time. And so I get to meet a lot of people and learn from them. And that's how I became interested in dairy. A long story short, how I came, come to the United States was that I worked there at the dairy for a few years, 3 years, and then on the last year, the owner actually recognized me, and I got promoted to assistant manager, and then later he decided to send me to the United States to a graduate school. So that's how I came to the University of Arizona in Tucson, where I did my master's and PhD degree in dairy nutrition. And from then, I became a dairy nutritionist. I went back actually after graduate. I went back to work for him to manage his company. And later, I came back to return to United States, reside in Fresno, California. And that's where I went to work for Cargill. So I worked for Cargill for a couple of years as a dairy consultant. Then I travel, up and down the valley to visit dairy farms and provide technical service to them. In 1997, 98, I started my own business as an independent consultant. So I work here in the valley, provide service to my clients. At the same time, I started my own dairy farm in 1999. To around 2007, I sold the dairy. So I have a little bit experience as a dairy owner myself in California.
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, I said that gives you some great insight there. You're not just recommending, giving advice, recommending ration changes and so forth for your clients, but when it's your own farm, that's a different story, correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It gave me a great experience to to feel what dairyman feels, because you're a consultant, you probably don't see from the angle where the dairyman sees, right? But as an owner, you basically know what's going on at the farm all the time, not just the cows, but also every aspect of the farm management, the dairy management, right? From the cost of production to labor, everything else, and that really helped me a lot to understand, from the dairyman's prospect. When I doing consulting work, I always see the what dairyman sees. So you sympathize, and you also not only sympathize them, but also you see from the angle. On every decision you make is for the interest of the dairyman. That's how you can be a good consultant to them, right? Because you're helping them to make good decision for their for the interest.
No, and that's a really interesting background, Walter. I recall you saying that as a young child, you didn't even have the opportunity to drink milk, right? Just given the limitations of the infrastructure and dairies and in China. And then I also recall you telling me about going out in the middle of the night to treat a cow for milk fever when maybe the manager wasn't there or someone. So you really went from no dairy experience, literally, even in your own daily consumption, to all in on dairy.
Right, and it's a very good experience for me, because if you come to California, you don't see a Chinese dairyman, right? And I was like the only one. I mean, either consultant or dairy owner. You don't see Chinese doing dairies very much. Most of them are Dutch or Portuguese, right?
Great. I'm sure you have quite a few stories for another time on that transition and working at that point as a minority in the dairy industry. So I guess fast forward to today, um, really 100% of your business is focused on your group in China. Unfortunately, given the pandemic and some of the regulations in China, I know you and I think our last trips to China were the end of 2019. So even though your business is running there, thankfully you have a great group of partners and consultants. You haven't been back there for quite a number of years also. So tell us a little bit about what your team is doing in China.
Sure, sure. So I founded this company, my consulting company in China back in 2013. So almost 10 years now, and I have a great team. We have 7 consultants on the ground. And so the pandemic really kind of has slowed down things quite a bit. Especially the zero COVID policy that the government enforcing. Recently they're just loosening the rules now, but for the last 3 years, there's been a lot of lockdowns. Every city, every place they go. So sometimes they got locked down in some remote area. They don't even have a good place to stay, and hotel will refuse them to take a meal. And so sometimes they have to sleep at the farmhouse just to stay overnight there and get away from the city. But has been some challenge. But overall, I think it's good because we also learn another way to communicate with our clients. For example, I've been here in California for the last 3 years, staying home, working mostly at nighttime, communicate with my clients over in China because that's the daytime there. I find another way to communicate and it's more focused because when you call up for a Zoom meeting, all their attention's on you. Where you go to the farm talking to you can be something else come up and will kind of distract, right? So in a way, it's good that people can focus more on your message and listen to you more carefully. So I think in a way it's good. The bad thing is that I can go to see them and see the cows myself. So my team will have to help me out. They're going out there, they'll collect information and send it to me. So usually I analyze the data before I have any meeting with them.
Excellent. And Walter, I think we probably every business has found that too. And I think now a lot of businesses are in the process. Obviously, dairy, agriculture is very different. They're really important to be on site, but we have found ways to, when we couldn't, or to now blend those capabilities, if you will, and maybe reduce some travel and be more efficient, but also still have those on-site visits. And hopefully in the near future, China will be more open. I guess, Walter, for some of our guests, I know. We still work with obviously some clients in China, and I was traveling a fair bit there a number of years ago, and one of the questions I often got asked was, why are you helping the competitors? You're helping other countries, you're helping people develop their industry, and that's going to reduce the opportunities for us. I guess my response was always, really, I don't see it that way. These countries don't have the capability to, one, meet their dairy product needs currently and probably won't in the future, just given land base and infrastructure. But more importantly, and I think you could talk a little bit about this, is most Asian people in Asian countries, at least, in the past, and that's changing, haven't really had either access or the taste, if you will, their desire to consume dairy products because they didn't know about them. So certainly cheese, I think it was really rare for me to come across cheese in China. Yogurts, lots of drinkable yogurts were really popular, probably more so than the US. But what I saw was the opportunity as you introduce people, as some of those countries become more westernized and people want to eat pizza and cheeseburgers and ice cream and yogurt, now they've developed the taste, if you will, for those products. And if a country can't meet the needs, well, then that actually opens up more markets perhaps for exportation. Can you comment? Because I'm sure, especially as a Chinese dairyman in the Central Valley, those questions came up, or those discussions.
Oh, absolutely. And I totally agree with you. As I mentioned, when I grown up in China as a kid, I never drink milk. And it's not that I don't want to drink milk. I cannot drink milk. Is there's not no milk available. And back in the 80s, even 90s, it's hard to find milk in China. And because only in the entire country, only a few dairy farmers stay on farms, and usually those milk was supplied to government officials, and ordinary people are not able to access to milk. And so if you look at today, let's fast forward from 80s to now, you're looking at we'll produce like 30, 40 million metric tons of milk a year, and we still import about 15-20%. Okay, so supply probably about 80% of milk. But the consumption per capita in China now, from almost nothing back 20 years ago, now is like 20 liters per 20, or let's say 45 pounds per person. And that's a dramatic increase in a very short time. And there's still a lot of room to growth. Look at those more developed countries like Japan, or even look at Hong Kong or Taiwan. There are over 100 liters, so 5 times more than what the Chinese is drinking now in terms of milk product. So and you mentioned about Pizza Hut. Yeah, if you ever travel to China, every city that you can see a Pizza Hut everywhere. And so kids like to eat pizza kind of everywhere in the world. And so as a result, cheese consumption goes up. And those are non-exist before. So I don't see any conflict between the development of the dairy industry in China, or even Southeast Asia. I just came back, as I mentioned to you, that I came back from the trip to Southeast Asia. Same thing. Their industry is developing, but there's not going to be enough. They don't have that resource to supply enough milk for them. So they basically still have to import a lot of products from other countries.
Oh, thanks, Walter. And I think that's really important. And one thing I've always been so impressed about in visiting with you is your global knowledge and your global experience in terms of dairy. And I think for many years now, dairy owners, dairy producers have thought more on a global nature and the opportunities globally versus just locally or even within the U.S. But still, I think lots of dairies concentrate on their region, maybe not even their entire state, when we need to really open up those opportunities for the entire world. And then that's some good insight. Walter, I'd like to lead into some of the strategies you use, and I guess looking back again from my early days in China, which was again about when you started your business, some of the ability to increase productivity that wasn't necessarily related to forage quality or ration balancing. Certainly, lots of opportunity there, especially forage quality, and just lots of the infrastructure, agronomy, and so forth, but I know you spent a lot of time just focusing on reproduction, and at one point you commented how, you reached a certain point with your dairy producers in terms of improved forage quality, ration balancing, other ration strategies, but you couldn't make that next leap until they got repro fixed. And I think most all dairy producers understand that really well. But talk a little bit about that and how you work with your clients there.
Oh, sure. And let me back up a little bit. 20 years ago when I started going to China as a consultant, there are very few large dairy herds. Most of them are, 1 or 2 cows, 5 cows, 10 cows, are very small holders. And so it really, technology cannot apply to them. There's no way they can adopt any technologies. But later, especially after 2008, the melamine scandal, the government started to shut down all the smallholders, and of course, milk processors also don't want to have milk being, fortunate. They don't want any milk coming from smallholder that can be manipulated before they send it to the process, right? So,
and Walter, just really quickly for maybe some of our younger audiences that are listening, I think for a lot of us, the melamine scandal, kind of made the media worldwide. I think everyone knew about that. But just take a minute and for those who maybe are less familiar, describe the melamine scandal.
Okay, sure, sure. So at in early 2000, there was a like a dairy frenzy. Government encouraging the farmers to own one or two cows, even give out loans, free loans to them to buy cows. So everybody's milking cows. All the village you go, all of a sudden they're buying cows left and right. And I remember one of the story that people telling me that farmers bought some cows and it comes with rain and the cow, all of a sudden the black and white strap is gone. It becomes a yellow cow. So you think about the how hard was it that everybody buying cow don't even know what is a cow, a Holstein cow, and instead of buying a local yellow cow. So because everybody there's no dairy culture there, unlike United States. Everybody third and fourth generation milking cow, about cows. In China, no, nobody know about cow. And the funny is that they everybody want to milk cow. They think they can make money out of milking cows. But the problem is that there is no technology. They don't know how to take care of an animal. So as a result, their milk quality is terrible. So the processor or the government has some kind of standard for milk protein, right? So when the protein is they cannot meet the protein requirement, like I think it was 2.9%, which is very easy to meet, but often they're lower than 2.9%. And the reason is because they don't feed them right. They don't feed them enough fermentable carbohydrates, so they don't produce enough milk protein. So what they do instead of feeding the cow correctly, they put in stuff in the milk, and the stuff they put in is called melamine. And melamine is one of the components of fertilizer, but it's actually, when you add into the milk, it can be dangerous when human consume it, and especially for babies. So at the time, around 2007, 2008, there were babies, I don't know, 20-some babies got killed or something. And there was a huge news worldwide. It happened in the time that China hosts the Olympics. And so the government hold the news down for, I don't know, for a month or two until they cannot hold it anymore, and they release the news. So the entire industry collapsed overnight. Nobody can sell milk. I remember when I was working with my clients, Huaxia Dairy, they had to dump milk to the drain because there's nobody taking any milk, nobody drinking milk. It was a disaster.
So it was adulteration of milk with melamine to artificially raise milk protein. So when it went to the plant, the milk tested at, say, 3.2 protein, and they met the standard when it was just all adulterated with a chemical that was harmful to humans. So, but go ahead. So I didn't want to derail you there, but I think for some listeners, they would be less aware of that scandal.
Certainly. So when after that, then the industry basically have a consolidation or overhaul of the entire industry. So government put that in very tight regulation of what type of dairy you can have and all that, and all the small farms have to go into a community farm and milk in a collective milking center. And that was going on for a while, but it didn't work. So later, then consolidate again. Become individual farms. So, people bring, 1 or 2 cows, 5 cows, and then later they just sold to some of the owners. So it kept growing. So become individual farms. But what really changes the industry is all the, investors, foreign investors, and some other business people that got interested and saw the opportunity and start to invest in the dairy industry. And there was a boom between 2010 to 2014, I believe. There are a lot of foreign investment pour into the dairy industry and built a lot of large dairy operations, we call mega farms, 10,000 head operations. As of today, you can see when you go to China, you will see a lot of mega farms. So, but even with all these newly built farms, the dairy farming is still new to most of the people, and that's why we started a lot of dairy training program And as you mentioned earlier about the reproduction, yes, I do focus on the reproduction because most of the farms, they don't know how to get the cows pregnant. So the preg rate, you look at the record, the preg rate is about less than 10%. So when you cannot get cows pregnant, certainly they're not able to produce milk, right? Very simple. So in order, as a nutritionist, of course, I want to focus on nutrition, focus on forage quality. But if they don't get the cows pregnant, there's no way you can help them improve their production. So what we do is instead is to focus on the reproduction. And we'll focus on production using, the latest technology, pre-sing, off-sing, double-sing. And all of a sudden, their reproduction improved dramatically. As today, if you go to China, there are a lot of farms that even over 30% preg rate, and that's incredible in a very short period of time. And production-wise, is more than double nationally. Back in 20 years ago, you're looking at about 4,000 liters average, and now you're looking at over 8,000. And some of the farms, as you know, some of your clients too, is over 12,000 liters, which is roughly like 25,000 pounds per year in average. So that's a big change from 20 years ago.
No, certainly, Walter. We are now working with herds, like you said, that have preg rates in the in the 30s and milk production 43, 45 liters in some cases, well over 100 pounds of milk. So amazing progression if you think about it, of really starting 20 years ago with no dairy industry and a handful of cows to progressing to that. And certainly, the infrastructure, the management, or so forth would be on par with any modern facility in any country. So Walter, day to day, you're obviously you're consulting with clients with many different aspects of dairy management. We could talk a little bit about the software that you have, but also just what are some of the key nutritional strategies that you have day to day. For our listeners out there, what matters to them? It matters to, produce milk at a cost that, obviously the net income over feed costs and so forth. So what are the processes that you and your team use, and some of your thoughts of maximizing the opportunity for the dairy producer?
Certainly. In fact, in China, dairies are facing a more challenge than we do because they have to rely on import of many things. Alfalfa hay, for example, is pretty much imported from the United States, and they have to import DDGS, soybean meal, a lot of stuff is imported, and so as a result, the cost is quite high. So feed cost is high, even though milk price is pretty decent. We're looking at probably about $24, $25 underweight there right now. But it's still a challenge because their feed cost is much, much higher than the United States here. So we always have to focus on efficiency, right? The higher production you have, the lower cost, right? Will lower your cost. So my focus is always on trying to improve the forage quality because, easy to get the grain there. It's hard to get the cows to eat more if the forage quality is not there. So number one is corn silage. So for the last 20 years, I remember when I first went to China, my first seminar was about corn silage, how to make corn silage in northeast of Heilongjiang. That was my first seminar. And people didn't know what is corn silage because everybody was feeding corn stockage. What basically the corn stalks left over after they harvest the corn. And there's no way they can produce this kind of milk production if they're feeding corn stockage. And when you go now to southern China, most people are feeding rice straws to their cows as a main forage. So these are the limitations. Even if you import the cows from Australia, from New Zealand, those cows capable of producing 30, 40 liters, but instead they'll produce only like 10, 15 liters. So that's the main focus, improve quality of corn silage. And people start to accept corn silage, and slowly they're improving. From beginning of the about 2010, they were still struggling making good corn silage. Their dry matter is very low, in the mid 20s, and the starch is very low, around probably 18, 20%. Now everybody's focusing on making good corn silage. So some of my clients actually make excellent corn silage. I mean, as good as we can get here, even though the variety of corn silage may not be the variety that we use here, but they can make pretty similar quality, and not just starch content, dry matter content, but also fiber digestibility. So everybody now is focusing on that, and that makes a big difference. So one of my clients recently just reached 43, 44 liters now. I think it's getting close to 45 liters. And I found that what makes a difference was the corn silage and then alfalfa hay. The forage makes a big difference in terms of milk production.
Walter, I think that's some really interesting insight. The degree to which you've been pushed, because your clients have been pushed with feed costs, right? You're saying lots of imported feeds, alfalfa hay. I'm sure a lot of people didn't realize that corn silage is grown locally in China, but almost all of the alfalfa hay and even oat straw, good quality oat straw, is imported from Australia. So those I think are great opportunities even for U.S.-based dairies, as you really challenge that to the next level of those feed costs. What have you found also, access to other products and so forth? Has that been real limiting? There's lots of supplements on the market, and I know there's plenty that exist in China. What's generally your approach when you're evaluating a supplement, especially given some of those extra import costs?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of supplements, feed additives that's been exported to China. So you can see a lot of them are available in the market, but their cost is extremely high. Usually, if you see a product in the United States, in the United States, and it's also available in China, the price in China probably about 2 or 3 times more, and that's how much it costs you. And not just the shipping cost, but everything else, marketing, everything else, all the costs adds up. And of course, any product goes to China have to go through a registration with the Ministry of Agriculture, and the process all takes long time, also takes money to get product registered. So that's why the cost is so high. And there are also a lot of local products, but most of the local products are not really research-based. So in other words, you really cannot trust a lot of local made products. But, dairymen don't know very much. So they have to often ask us as a consultant that whether this product is reliable. I always tell them that you need to ask them for more information, ask them about research, and then send, if there any published any research. Sometimes they've done some research. Some product they'll conduct some research by the university there, and you have to look at carefully how the research is interpreted. So it's not very easy. It's kind of confused for most of the people when they look at all these feed additives and supplements available in the market.
Yeah, and obviously, given the 2 to 3 times cost, a huge investment, and you really need to make sure that return is there to use those products. So I think that's some great.
Absolutely. That's why I always recommend that they either have to look at if they have research being done, or they need to hire someone to conduct some research to really compare and see if that is truly the return on investment is good for them.
And Walter, I think that's another interesting, you say research. I noticed just really in the last few years, the number of publications in Journal of Dairy Science that are coming out of China, impressive. Years ago, you nothing to maybe a publication here and there. And a lot of those publications, I think, were really esoteric, academic, not really applicable when you looked at the title or read the abstract. But more now, I think, and this year, yeah, almost every issue has a few publications from China. So that's impressive to see, what research is also coming out of the universities there.
Yeah, that's true. And I think part of it is that, people realize that they need to, especially, in universities, professors, they feel they need to publish papers in a well-known journal so that they can get credit for it. If they only publish in China, probably uh, not very well recognized. So that's why they're pushing a lot of people. They even for graduate students, they need to publish their paper in Journal of Dairy Science so they can graduate from school.
Oh, excellent! Yeah, that's excellent, and great to see some of the research that's coming from there. Walter, along those lines of research, obviously for good quality research, we need good quality data. Why don't you talk a little bit about quite a number of years ago, you started working on a software platform. That was really based on the fact that a lot of the imported softwares that we might know in the U.S. or Mexico dairy industry really well just quite didn't fit the Chinese management style, if you will, or even, obviously there's translations and so forth, but not even to that extent, just even the management and the needs of that software. So can you give the audience a little bit of background of your program, Aladdin, and how that's been utilized? Impressive number of cows that are on that platform now.
Sure. So when I first started out doing consulting in China, the first thing I realized that you need data. And most of the farm at the time, they don't even have any data. They probably have the most they have is Excel spreadsheet that record some numbers, but they don't really have a real management software to manage the herd. And that makes very challenge for me to analyze, how things are going at the farm, in terms of production, the production and everything else. So I recognize the shortage. So I was pushing very hard for all my clients to use American software to manage their herd. And as you mentioned, the translation is a challenge. But most important, the concept is quite different. They don't perceive the same thing that we perceive here. So it's very difficult for them to understand why you need to do this, why you need to do that. And also the complication of the software that makes hard for them to use. So that's when I started realizing we need to develop something for the industry there. So in 2015, we start to put out a first version of our system, develop a system called Aladdin. And our first focus was on implementing protocols. Like I mentioned earlier about the reproduction protocol, if you don't have a software to implement a protocol, it's difficult to implement, right? You just tell them how to do, but they just don't do it. So, but with the software, you are able to basically every single day, you print out a list or send out a list to their cell phone that these cows need an injection, either PG or GnRH. So it makes it very simple for them to implement your program. They don't need to ask why or how. They just do it. And then you can see the result, right? So that's when I first put out the very simple version, Aladdin. And then later we perfecting it, make it into now, today we call it UniDairy, a cloud-based UniDairy platform. And now we have 1.4 million cows running on the platform. And most of the large dairy groups are on our system. We have probably the top 10 of the largest dairy groups on our platform. So we have a lot of data to analyze. And I wish I would, we try to look into some of the big data, because once you have a lot of data on the cloud, you are able to run a lot of analysis after you clean up all the data, of course. So I'm eager to look into how we can to analyze those data and for the benefit of the industry, or get more insights about how the dairy will work, or the strategy or protocols that will work.
That's really exciting, Walter, and Yeah, we all know that, not only from the research side, but just day-to-day management, we need that data, but also, the confidence in the data, right? Because what do they say? Bad data is worse than no data at all, right? And certainly we have seen, errors in decisions being made based on data that's not correct, or over interpretation of the data also, right?
Oh,
We
totally
think
agree.
we see, yeah, we think we see something, but it's not there. Yeah, actually, I just finished a webinar for a group, Global Solutions Nutrition webinar, but I talked about database decision making and just the different processes that we can use, and so all this is fresh. But one comment, one of the slides they had, the daily variation that we see in milk production is often more than the effect that we can measure from a product in a trial, but that effect is actually beneficially economically. So, if our daily variation is more than what we're looking for from a product, how are you going to do a before and after, or even have a few pens randomly, assigned, if you will? So,
Oh, absolutely, and I totally agree. And then when I look at the data, we had a big data conference is actually coming up this I think December 15 in Guangzhou, and we're running some data on our platform, to look at some data. It'll be exciting to see, and certainly what I see, we have to eliminate a lot of bad data, like you say, because some of the farms may not input it correctly. Fortunately, many years ago we realized that issue, and so we kind of define many things clearly, so that when people input the data, will be the same thing that we're looking for. For example, you call metritis, you call the same name, you don't call a different name. And so when you define that clearly, then it's most likely they're not gonna input it wrong, right? But still, there's a lot of missing data and this and that. So certainly, it's important to look at the data and clean up the data before we try to interpret it. What really means.
No, that's a great point. Benchmarking is a great tool for monitoring, but to actually make decisions off of it, like you said, is this pneumonia a pneumonia? Is this metritis a metritis? Or was it recorded correctly? What have you? So those points are really well taken. Well, Walter, thank you so much for your insight. Again, really intriguing background, and hopefully you've given the audience here some insight as to international dairy, international ag, and just your experience, and also the opportunity, how that could open up markets, and I think even along the lines, and maybe get some arguments about exportations and so forth, but the need of grains and products exportation to China and so forth. So extended markets in the ag industry. I guess with that, we've been wrapping up these dairy podcasts with a few questions. I guess one is what is either a book or a resource that you look to for dairy industry advice? What's up and coming? Any recommendations for the audience?
Most of the resources of books or the journals, I look at, Journal of Dairy Science. I'm a member of American Dairy Science Association, and so I always like to read the most recent publications, and also I always pay attention to those most common journals. Probably everybody's looking at dairy herd management, progressive dairyman. All these are good information for me that I want to learn. And also, I also pay attention to a lot of extension websites where they will publish, information, new research information and all that. That is really helped me to keep up with the update, the information, the current information.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So a wide range. And then what about outside of dairy, when you're not connected to China or enjoying time with your son Daniel? What do you have any good reads lately?
Not really. I was just trying to read some books that on the bookshelves I have here, but it's not really any particular. I spend a lot of time working on the technical side of things, trying to read more journals, and trying to update myself. And so I really, don't spend a lot of time doing other leisure things. I guess too busy. That's maybe one excuse.
Yeah, or you're telling me you're working on math problems with your son, helping him with his homework, right? So you're
Oh yes,
yeah,
yes, yeah. Trying to.
great. And then I guess and I think you have a really good insight here from China, U.S., your own dairy experience. What do you think is something that really sets aside apart the I'll say progressive, profitable dairy producer in terms of some items, some things?
Well, I think it's all the same. I remember when I was working with dairymen in California here back in, the late 90s, early 2000. The same thing, I have, different clients. And the ones always very progressive is they always focus on efficiency, always focus on cow comfort. They would spend time to with the cows and to see, what area they can improve. And the same thing, in China, we have, clients from hundreds, thousands cows to clients only milk, a couple thousand cows. And the same thing, the one that really do well is always focused on cows. Cows are their number one priority, whether, they're comfortable, whether they're clean, whether the cooling system's working perfect or not. It's always something that they focus on to make improvement, and those are really doing well. So even in a bad time, when milk price is low, they're still okay. You don't, most of people wait until until they're having trouble and then start to cut costs, and that's make it even worse, right? When things are worse and now you're gonna try to feed something cheaper, they ask me, oh, can I feed this? Can I feed this waste? Can I feed that to cheapen the ration? No, it make it worse, right? So I think the mentality is that you focus on efficiency no matter what, no matter it's a good time or bad time. And then you can, when bad time comes, you can weather that better than other people.
I really appreciate the response, Walter, because you need to run the dairy like a business. So efficiency, you need to keep economics and efficiency in line, but then don't forget the cow. And I think that's so important, and especially with some negative connotation in with some social media and so forth against factory farms and so forth. It is a business. You need to run it efficiently, but don't forget the individual cow. And I think that's some great points to leave our audience with today. Again, thanks so much for joining. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully we've made time here that you can get off to pick up Daniel from school and enjoy some time before connecting to the night rotation in China.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been an honor.
A pleasure. Great. Take care, Walter.